Welcome to the season one finale of Unmute Yourself. I'm your host, Jennifer Carter, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is about lifting the curtain on leadership, purpose, and the real stories behind people who dared to do things differently. We'll talk about how they found their path, the struggles they faced, and how they built something that truly matters. These are everyday people doing extraordinary things, and I want you to know you are capable of that too. And I can't believe how far we've come. From conversations about courage and leadership to stories of transformation and purpose. And I can't think of a more fitting way to close this season than with today's guest. I am joined by Michelle Dennis, an expressionistic visual artist based in New York City. Michelle earned her MFA from Boston University and her BFA from the Ringling School of Art and Design. Now, just 2 years after graduating, she held her first solo exhibition in Chelsea, a huge milestone for any artist. Her work has since been featured in Art America, Artscape Magazine, and numerous national exhibitions and fairs, including Art Chicago, Red Dot, and the IFPDA Print Fair. Her art is deeply emotive. It captures both the vulnerability and the power of expression. And what makes her story so meaningful is how she continues to create, to express, and to evolve in the midst of motherhood, proving that artistry and identity don't have to be sacrificed. They can coexist beautifully. Michelle, I'm so honored to have you here for the finale of season one.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to spend my morning with you.
Yeah, I have just so enjoyed getting to know you. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear your journey and how this has all played out for you. So let's just start at the very beginning. When did you first know that art was going to be more than a passion, but a path?
So, I don't think all growing up I knew that I was an artist. I just loved to make things, but I had never gone to a museum. I was never exposed to fine art as even an option. I grew up really poor. And so it was just more about survival.
Right.
So art was not even something on my mind, but every time I would go to my grandma's house, she just loved painting. And it was her way of just kind of forgetting about the worries of life and just immersing yourself in something that is like a vacation. It takes you away, a new world that you create. And I loved that she used her art like that. So I started kind of exploring, and then I know every year for my birthday, she would take me to AC Moore and she would be like, okay, pick out whatever paints you want, whatever things you want. And we would do craft fairs together. And she just really opened my eyes to how satisfying it can be to just make something with your hands and how you can feel good about it.
Wow. So how did you end up at art school?
So in high school, I was studying architecture because since I was 3 years old, I was always building with blocks and I just wanted to be in my own head. I was so creative and I guess they call it like the bossy kid, because I was just so in my own zone, in my own world all the time and creative. And so at 3 years old, it was like, she's going to be an architect. I loved math. I loved drawing. I loved building. And then in high school, my architecture teacher, we started realizing that was when architecture started moving onto a computer. And I was like, but I like to make things with my hands. I want to draw. I want to make it. I don't want to be on a computer. And he was like, well, have you ever thought about like art maybe? And this was my senior year in high school. So we had to scramble together last minute. He helped me make a portfolio. I took a summer course, and my grandparents, they were like, well, there's this really cute art school in Florida, and they lived there. And they were like, why don't you come down? And I was like, okay.
Just
I
like
hadn't
that.
actually thought of going to college. It wasn't really in my radar of things to do, but I applied. It was the only school I applied to. Didn't really know much about art, and I got accepted.
Oh my gosh. So you just followed your path? You just did things without really second guessing yourself, it sounds like. You
I
just
didn't
did it.
even know what to expect. Yeah. And my whole family was hoping because it was an art school, but it still had an interior design
Mhm, mhm.
component. And they were like, yeah, that makes sense. She'll probably go there for interior design. And then my first year, I remember in figure drawing class, like, I did not draw figures like the rest of the kids in the class, and I thought that meant I must be a terrible artist, like, this is not for me. I'm much better at drawing buildings and architecture and things that are, like, geometric
Uh-huh.
in shape, and instead, my teacher was like, this is what we wanna see," and he got so excited, the fact that my drawing was wrong, in my opinion, you know? And he said there was some kind of passion behind it, and my teachers actually started telling me that there was something there, and I didn't really know what that was, so I had to discover what that was. And I know that when I told my family after my first year of college that I was choosing my major as fine art, they all said, "What?
Don't do
What are you
it.
doing? Oh my god, what are you gonna do with your life? You're gonna be painting face painting on the beach," like, that's what they thought.
They're like, you
Like, "What are you gonna do?" I'm the first person to go to college, and then I'm gonna throw it away on an art degree.
but you did it anyway.
I did it anyway because that was what I needed to do. It was very clear at that point that I had a talent here and I needed to follow it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love without, it sounds like real support and people just panicked for you as a young person. But, regardless, I know you've had some incredible milestones very early in your career, right? Your first solo
Yeah.
exhibition, major shows, recognition in top art publications. And so through that time period, what did those early years teach you about yourself as an artist as well as about the art industry?
Yeah. It taught me that a lot of things that we think of as art as kids, like being able to draw something hyper realistic or skilled is not actually what art is about, that it's about putting your feeling into it and giving it an expression and a voice in a way that maybe no one's ever thought of before. Like, I know that I paint donkeys, and I think when I tell people, yeah, I paint donkeys, they're like, what? And they're picturing some cartoon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I like to think that I paint a donkey in a way that people haven't seen it before. And I think that I give them human characteristics and they no longer become a donkey when you look deep enough.
Yeah, your work to me, it is unlike anything I've ever seen before, and it just grabs you. And I know, you and I have talked about how your creative process has shifted through time. How
Yes.
did motherhood shift your perspective and your art?
That threw me for a loop. So, yeah, I remember through art school and, looking at women artists and wondering, can you have both? Can you actually do both? A lot of the women artists either they didn't have kids or they stopped for a long time. And I was just like, I don't know how these two work together because being an artist is kind of like being a mother because you're giving birth to these things and you're creating it from scratch. And half the time when I finish something, I'm like, I made that? I don't even know where that came from. And being a mom is a lot like that. You look at your kids and you're like, I made that? How did this happen? you know?
Yeah, it's a
And you're just
miracle.
blown away, and it's just a journey, and you can't control it. It's not something that can be controlled or, structured. You just have to let go and let things happen, and it gets messy, and it gets ugly, and it's not what you expect, and then you realize that's where you're supposed to be anyway, you know?
Wow. So letting go of your current ideals of what you're supposed to be creating, doing how it's supposed to end up and just create.
Yes, I never thought of myself as the donkey painter. It's kind of weird.
Why don't you
It's kind of
tell
weird
our
and it's kind of embarrassing, but that's just what happens when you let go,
yeah,
you know?
tell our listeners about your paintings, 'cause you only
So,
paint donkeys really right now.
no, I'm starting to get into figures as well
Mhm.
because that's what I've always been scared of, and that's how motherhood changed my art. It was like whatever you're most scared of, that's where you got to go.
Wow.
Because we know that about our kids, right? Our kids are like, "Oh, I'm so scared to do this. I'm so nervous." And you're like, "But that's going to be the thing for you. Try it." And I realized, why tell her that? Why not just show her that, you know?
Wow. Yeah, so your perspective has really changed.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so you started painting donkeys. R
Yes.
Did it just kind of
This
happen?
was this was a strange evolution.
I love this.
I have always painted abstract. I love the abstract expressionists. I remember, and I love big, bold artwork that's just like, paint flying everywhere, tips, process driven. I've painted with every material possible. I've even used tinfoil, wax, all kinds of stuff in my paintings. And I loved that part. I even there was a painting that I did called Bucket of Gesso. And gesso is what you use to prime a canvas before painting on it. I took the entire gallon bucket of gesso and just threw it at the canvas. It made this beautiful, big, giant splash. I let it drip. I loved things like that. And then something I this part is silly, but um my grandfather, it was his birthday, and I saw this really great painting from a famous artist that I love, Zutine. And it was a painting of a little donkey. And I just thought, I want to paint this for my grandfather. I haven't told you the story of that, but he loved donkeys. And so I painted him this little painting, and I really enjoyed painting it. I was like, "Oh, that's different." I've never ever, like, copied another artist's work. That's not my style. I don't do that, you know? And I did, and then it left my studio. I gave it to my grandpa. He loved it, but I missed it after it left. And I was like, "This is a weird feeling." So I had this blank, giant 8-foot canvas in my studio, and I painted a giant donkey on it. Because I thought I'm just going to throw this thing in the trash. So I used like my cheapest paint. I did it with my hands because I wasn't even sure how would someone draw a donkey. I don't know. So I just went for it with my hands in the paint. I'm sculpting it onto the surface of the canvas. And then it kind of felt at that moment too like I was making the donkey but also like feeling it, when you touch an animal like that and they're so big and they're so powerful and you're just like in awe of that experience. So I hid this painting in my studio and we had a big art critique and I brought in all my abstract work, big mountains, big paint flying everywhere. I brought all those in, and the critique was interesting because this was in grad school. The other artists were saying, it's interesting, your work is almost taking on a figurative aspect. It's like there's a figure hiding in there somewhere. And I was like, that's weird. That's never happened before. But anyway, I went through the critique and it went fairly well. And then afterwards, I went up to my teacher and I was like, do you think you could come in my studio and see something for a minute? I'm not really sure what to make of it. So I brought him in and I show him this giant 8-foot donkey that doesn't go with any of my other work at all. And he's like, "So what's that?" And I don't know. I don't know. And then he says, "Okay, well, what are you gonna do with it from here? Is it finished or?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm planning to like kind of cover it up and hide it underneath the surface of all these textures, all these layers, maybe drip paint over it." He was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. We got to get this thing out of here right now. You're gonna ruin it. It needs to come out of your studio right now." He took it out of my studio
Oh my
and
gosh.
hung it in the hallway for all the other students to see, and no one knew whose it was. And I had to walk down the hallway like
You were
this.
nervous.
I can't even look at it. I cannot even look at it. It's so embarrassing. Who paints a giant donkey?
You do. Right? Like, the
I
yeah,
know, but
right.
it was just such an experience. I would have rather had a painting of me naked
Naked.
in my underwear
Yeah.
up there than like this weird, where does a donkey come from? You know?
Right.
It felt so vulnerable and terrifying, and that taught me that that's what art should feel like.
Wow. So something that scares you just enough that you don't want people to see it because you put your whole
Yes.
soul out there and you don't even know where it came from.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So I try to create that way when I'm in my studio, like what feels scary and vulnerable.
Wow. And I know your art has changed since becoming a mother,
Yeah.
right? And you're working on charcoal. You do a lot of charcoal now, right? Tell us
Yes.
about
So I
that.
have this drawing behind me right here. And this is the first thing I made in my studio that I finished after a decade of not making any art. This one here. And it's me holding my daughter. And I'm half human, half donkey. And she is a human. but her hair is kind of turning into like donkey ears. And so it's kind of riding that line between what an animal is and what a human is, which my work already was doing that. But I wanted to push that even further and make it obvious that we're the same. And especially the act of motherhood to me feels very animalistic, like a donkey, in the way that we become servants, right? We serve the world, we nurture the world, we carry the burdens, right? So all of a sudden the donkey became even more powerful in my work as to why I felt like I wanted to keep it. And of course the question was always going to be like, am I still going to paint donkeys or am I going to do something totally different? And that was a journey as well of finding like, am I? Does this still feel authentic to me? Is it still something, and I'm totally still in it.
Wow.
What shocked me was that I stepped away for over a decade and I came back and it's like I'm picking up where I left off.
It's still deeply inside of you. Right.
Yes,
Trying to get
I
out.
never expected that. I thought, oh, something new and different's totally going to come out. I'm not the same person anymore, which I'm not, but it just picked up where it left
Yeah,
off.
and it is very distinctly a new era, a new you. And I see so many women struggle with the tension between their work, whatever that is, whether it's in a creative field, the business realm, whatever it is, and caregiving and motherhood, feeling like they can't do both. So,
Yes.
how do you navigate that, or how have you navigated that?
That's why I put it off for a decade because I just felt like it's so hard to do it all, as we say, like that feeling that as women we have to be the best mothers, plus hold our career down, plus keep the house together. It's just it's like living multiple people's lives, and I'm not a juggler. So I've known that about myself for a long time. When I was an artist, that's all I cared about. What I ate had to do with making the best art. What I exercised based on making the best art. Everything that I did was based on, I would come home after the day at the studio. I would apply for residencies and grants. I would go to openings. My whole life was all one thing.
Focus.
I'm a very singular focused person. So when motherhood came and I tried to do both, it just felt like my heart was being ripped in two. And no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough.
Wow.
The art felt terrible. And when I was making art, I felt like I was not prioritizing my daughter. And then when I'm with my daughter, feeling like I should be making art. And it was such a heartbreaking feeling that I couldn't hold those two at the same time.
How did you decide to come back to it, to art?
Yeah. People have pushed me all along the way, like, oh, you can still do both. You can make little paintings in your house, can't you? And I'm like, have you seen me paint? Like, paint flies everywhere. It's not really something I want to do in
Right.
my house. I'm kind of messy when I'm getting the charcoal. It's all over my face. It's in my hair. It's in my ear.
Right.
Like I can't help it. I'm in the materials, and I want our house to not be covered in toxic materials
Please. Yeah.
with a child.
Right.
And my daughter also, I could just tell right from the beginning that she needed a lot more than what I had thought. I had seen these moms who could do both and work full time and still have the child. And I'm still not sure how they do it, but they must have more help. And that's what I've decided is that when you see a mom who looks like she's doing it all, it's because she's got some support that maybe you don't know about.
Or she's
And I
not
didn't
doing
have
either
that.
one as well as she could be. I'm just trying to
Possibly.
make the best of it.
Possibly,
Yeah.
possibly. But I just didn't I knew that I wanted to raise my daughter differently than how I was raised. And for anyone who's had to go through that and re-raise themselves in order to raise their children better knows that that in itself is like uprooting the earth.
Right, right.
So I read at least 10 to 15 parenting books over the years. I also homeschool my daughter.
Mhm.
So I read 10 to 15 homeschooling books on how to homeschool.
I bet.
Um, I'm neurodiverse and I've learned that in my adult years. And so I really wanted to support her in that and show her that it's a strength, not a weakness,
Right.
and how to use that strength. And I felt like who better to teach her those things than me? because I'm doing the thing with the neurodiversity,
Doing the thing. Hey,
I'm
welcome
doing the thing.
welcome
I
to the
make
club.
sure to put my stuff right in front of the door before I leave so it does not get forgotten. My
Yes.
keys are attached to the bag so that I don't forget them,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
I have adapted all these tricks over the years. So, yeah.
So how do you something that I work with my clients on is figuring out who they are and getting really in touch with that inner voice because there's so much noise in the world and pulled in so many directions. We lose track of what we really want and who we really are. How do
Yeah.
you continuously ground yourself to remembering your inner voice when you might be feeling spread thin?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So, I feel like I almost didn't answer your first question all the way either, because they're related a little bit. So in this past decade, what changed was I started while my daughter would take classes, she's a little older now, so she's 10. I started reading books in cafes and things, and I started bumping into people that were saying things that shocked me. So one of them was this guy, I call him Crispy Toast, because he was describing his food at the cafe and he's very descriptive in his words. And I said, "Are you a food critic?" And he's like, "No, no, but I'm a writer." So and and he said that his mother was an artist and he really enjoyed watching her as a child be an artist and struggle through that and working through what it means to be an artist, how to keep putting yourself out there, how to take risks. And I thought, I just want the best life for my daughter. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe part of it is her seeing me put myself out there and that it isn't just all about her. And that was the first time that I really that resonated. And then I bumped into another artist in the cafe and he said he stopped making art when his kids were little, and then he just started up again and it was fine. And he said, "You don't have to feel like you're not an artist because you're not making art anymore." And I was like, "What?" That blew my mind because I had just assumed, I guess I'm not an artist anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm a mom and I love being a mom, but I didn't think of myself as an artist anymore. And I had avoided going to I didn't went to no art openings. I just exiled myself from that whole world because as soon as you show up at an art opening, the first question is, "Are you still painting?"
And then you're like, "No."
Right. And I just couldn't handle that. And I knew that, a lot of the people who would be asking that just couldn't understand what I've been going through with my daughter and what she needed. And I knew that I felt at least that they would see or think that I gave up on myself, which I didn't. I just chose to do something else and focus on that. And I think there's too much pressure. I see grants out there for women artists and mothers, and I'm shocked because it's like if your child is under the age of 1 or under the age of 3. And I'm like, why are we telling moms that they have to be prioritizing their art in those first 3 years? I was drowning in the first 3 years. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't barely eating. I couldn't keep myself hydrated. Like, I was practically dying and could barely survive. And I'm like, why would I? So I'm supposed to take my daughter into the studio screaming and crying with all these, issues and try to paint and it just felt so that was counterproductive to me. So I'm actually really disappointed that all the grants and support for women artists, mothers, is so young because I don't think that that's sending the right message.
Yeah, because I really like the part where you talked about, still being an artist even though you're not producing art.
Yeah.
And when does that time come for you? Because it's not just when they're little, it's all the time. And finding that realization, no matter how old your kids are, finding who you are inside yourself. It's a leader or an athlete or whatever it might be. That part of ourselves is still in there. And so it's finding it.
Yes.
So for you, what does unmuting yourself look like, both as an artist and as a woman?
Yes. That's a really, really great question. And I love that. And that's why when, the title of your podcast, I was just like, that's what I've been looking for. Because going through this is a lot to go through. I mean, I've cried in the studio many times after coming back. I have gone through the full range of emotions. This is my 1-year anniversary of being back in the studio. And I finally feel like I have my feet under me. And that's because I've gotten my mindset right. It has taken me a really long time to take care of myself and to love myself and support myself, no matter what that means, instead of all the things that kind of keep us stuck of like comparing or thinking you should be something that you're not. I finally am starting to just let go of that and just feel like this is who I am and this is what I'm doing
Yeah.
and I'm doing my best and this is what it is and I'm doing scary things and I'm just going to keep plugging away and being myself.
That's so exciting. That is so exciting. It's just like, when you were drawing figures and thought that they were wrong or not good enough, but it sounds
Yes.
like you really found your own uniqueness in being able to put that out for the world to see. So,
Yes.
oh my gosh, this time is flying by.
Yes.
But I have a few quick fire questions for you. Okay.
Yes. Well, also, too, you said you touched on something about some of the recent work. And I have a series right now as well that's chairs. And the chairs are meant to represent that time of reflection. So, the past 10 years of my life, how I wasn't necessarily producing a physical object of art, but I was still an artist. I was still processing, I was still evolving. And that time that we take in our lives, and I feel like, especially as women, we need permission to just like sit down and reflect, right? That we're not always having to be so like process driven, that the result is the goal. Actually, just having that time to reflect on yourself and love yourself and support yourself and give yourself time to think.
And we don't do that.
We don't do
We don't
that.
do that.
So I have a lot of artist chair. I call it the artist chair, but that's for anyone who's creating. We're all creating, right? And I'm doing so many of them that I'm having to push the chair beyond anything that even is a chair. Like, what could a chair be? All the different representations of a chair. And I also started doing some of them blindfolded.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes, because I felt like that's really what motherhood felt like for me. You're just jumping in completely blindfolded and you're having to feel your way through it. And that's how you know, I think, when you're really becoming connected with your child, just like with art, is that you just have to feel your way through it and trust yourself and not worry about all the noise, right? What other people are doing or what this book says or whatever, but just feeling your way through.
This interview is going to have such a profound effect on so many people. I'm calling it now. Yeah, I'm thinking of folks that I work with that are new mothers or about to be mothers or trying to juggle it all. And I love
Yeah.
how you have captured it in a way that I would say like traditional business leadership just can't. So, okay, so answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay. What's one lesson you've learned that you wish everyone knew?
Um, I would say just start. Just start something. Don't worry about the end, just start.
If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
The only person that matters is myself. So what other people think, what other people say, the only thing that matters is myself and my voice.
In one sentence, what does leadership mean to you today?
It means to live your beliefs.
What's the boldest choice you've made that's paid off?
The boldest choice I've made that has paid off, I would say trusting that the universe has my back. Like when I'm doing something that I'm supported in it.
Yes. And then what's the next big dream you're chasing?
Ooh, can I say big?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm a big dreamer.
Yes.
So, I am very excited to see my work in museums and public spaces.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I cannot wait. Michelle, I'm so excited for you. So this has been such a powerful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. And before we wrap, I do have a couple of final questions for you.
Sure.
Sure. So, if listeners walk away remembering just one thing from this conversation, what do you hope it is?
Say you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it all. It just doesn't have to be all at once. And I
Mm,
think sometimes giving yourself permission to just focus on one thing at a time and doing that one thing well, and then moving on, as opposed to trying to do it all at
the
once.
frazzled is real. I love that advice. And then on a more personal note, what has it meant for you to share your story here on Unmute Yourself today?
It's great because I really, really want to connect with others. I mean, that's what my art was really about. And I want to connect us all and support each other, especially as women moving forward and taking big risks. I just think we need to hold each other up and share our stories and inspire one another.
Right, because otherwise we don't get these connections quite often, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And just being vulnerable and not being perfect.
because we are not, are we? No.
No.
Michelle, how can listeners connect with you and support your work?
So they can visit my website. It's michelledennis.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram. It's Michelle Dennis Art.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, your art, and your wisdom with us today. And I have to say, you've reminded me and all of us that creativity doesn't fade, right? When life gets louder, it just finds those new forms. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining me throughout season 1 of Unmute Yourself. And this season has been so full of powerful stories from women with leading with purpose, courage, and authenticity. So if today's conversation inspired you, please share this episode, subscribe, like, follow, and stay tuned for more stories of leaders creating work that truly fits and matters. But don't go anywhere because season 2 kicks off December 2nd. And I can't wait to share even more conversations that inspire you to speak up and step forward. Until next time, unmute yourself and step into the story only you can tell.